Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. I'm Rich Maletto. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyBosco with, as always, Sean Engel. Brought to you by FantasyGuru.com. You can find Sean on Twitter at Sean, SEANE247. Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour. As I said, brought to you by FantasyGuru.com, a part of the Elite Plus Network. You can find us on YouTube. Please subscribe and like below. And you can find more great content over at FantasyGuru.com. More on that later. Sean, how are you doing on this fabulous Friday?
Well, it's a Friday. I'm here. It is actually kind of fabulous. It's not too bad, I'd say. So, you know what? I'm here with you talking NASCAR. We got ourselves the action track this week, so it'll be fun.
Well, we're hoping anyway, right? The action track has been a lot more no action track the last couple of years, but I talk a little bit about that in the overview article you can check out, like I said, on FantasyGuru.com. And don't miss out. If you want to catch more of Sean and my fantasy NASCAR content or betting content, actually, I mean, quite frankly, Sean and I have been a little bit hotter on the betting side, quite frankly. But if you want all that content, we have a new promo. We've heard of ludicrous speed. Have you heard of ludicrous pricing, Sean?
Ludicrous pricing? Oh, man, that sounds enticing. Do tell us more.
For $39.99, you get 12 months, full year, 12 months of NHL, NBA, NBA, NHL, PGA, MMA, soccer, racing, horse racing, and more. The only thing it doesn't cover is Major League Baseball, March Madness, and NFL. But hey, for $40 for a year, Sean and I have already made that money back for you just in the last month. If you haven't taken advantage, I'm confident we'll make it up for you in the next month. So stop on by FantasyGuru.com. All sorts of different packages, all sorts of sports. Check it out, but you cannot miss out. $39.99, $40, 12 months. Sean, like I said, that's ludicrous pricing.
It is ludicrous. I mean, you can't get much better than that unless they go down even further. But you know what? I'd say hop in now because this might be as good as it can get.
I don't know how we get it. I asked Ray, I said, because he goes, don't worry. We're not reducing the rate for the content. Your content has been stellar. We're just offering a great promo right now. And I'm like, well, people better start taking care of that. We're taking advantage of the promo because it won't be there forever, Sean. I promise.
Yeah, I'm sure. You know, these things are time limited, so I think the people ought to get on there and hop on it now.
I'm not sold that this is going to be pricing through the month of April. Like it may just be for the next few days to a week. So take advantage. Strike now. Well, more we can talk about a couple other things there because I don't know. Did we mention DFS Marlin yet, Sean?
No, we have not.
So transparency, or for in honor of transparency, Sean and I have already talked long before about potentially having Mr. DFS Marlin, Mark, come on the show. Mark has a background in football. Mostly he's worked in the front office at, I apologize if I'm going to get this wrong, but it was either the XFL, USFL, a mixture thereof, but he definitely has some insight. On top of that, he is a very, very savvy fantasy DFS player, like uncanny savvy. He's told Sean and I last year that NASCAR was the best kept secret. It was a moneymaker. Well, he tells no lies. He turned $440 worth of entries into 10 grand last weekend. So hat tip to DFS Marlin. Mark, wowzer. But we tell you all the time it can be done. We get Mark to tell you he doesn't know much about NASCAR. He goes and reads our stuff, checks out odds in Vegas, makes notes of things we said to watch as far as things changing, and he builds a lineup. So I think in the future we should probably look at maybe getting him on for a little bit, checking it out, picking his brain, contest selection, how he goes about building lineups, because I think, quite frankly, he's really good at it, Sean.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree, especially when he takes a lot of that information. He goes forth, he pumps out a few lineups, ends up winning about like 5 or 6 digits worth of money. That's definitely something to keep a note of. And you know what? We might be foreseeing a little bit of Marlin action in our future at some point. Do not know when yet, but I'm sure that maybe he might make a stop on here at some point.
Yes. We're hopeful anyway. So, well, let's talk about last weekend at COTA where Mark found all that success. What did you think of the first road course weekend of the year?
I thought that the first road course weekend, it was kind of, I'd say, it was just an all right week. Nothing extraordinary, but nothing too outright terrible either, I'd say. The Xfinity race, in my opinion, was the biggest highlight of the weekend just because that was the best race of the three. But I do think, though, that the Cup and truck races weren't all that bad either. Not like the most exciting, but not bad either.
So, we said before we thought the Xfinity race might be the best of the weekend. The trucks was all right. I got to give Cup 2 thumbs down, bro. And I know people are going to hate me for it. I was very disappointed with the product on the track. I really hate the stage breaks. And quite frankly, the number of track limit penalties throughout the weekend just killed my entire mojo for road racing. It is a large reason why I don't care for road racing. If I want to get the officials involved and get technical and all that, that's what F1 is for. I'm not knocking F1, but if that's okay with you, that's your thing, cool. My whole stance has always been, if there's a track, it's a track, it's a track. I don't like having out of bounds lines painted. I don't like any of this other stuff. We've never really had to do that except when you go to these very technical road courses. And then, of course, the super speedway racing, which you've heard me all gripe about that too. If there's pavement, if there's a way to go, look, it's a race. Go from point A to point B. I understand you got to go the full distance. We're not looking for you to cheat. But when officiating's got to get involved, Sean, I'm not into it, man. And I think COTA will be back again next year. And look, I've gone from hated road racing in NASCAR to, man, I really enjoyed it. Hope we had more to, you know what? I'm good with 2. I don't want any more. I don't need to see any more. So I'll take the heat, man. But I didn't think it was a very good event overall. And I could take it or leave it at this point.
As far as the officiating is concerned, I can understand why you wouldn't like the officiating because really NASCAR hasn't been the best at officiating. Let's be real about that. Although I think the idea of officiating on road courses, I think is something that does make sense in the context of some road courses because you don't want drivers taking shortcuts all the time throughout the courses. That in itself makes sense. It's just the fact that NASCAR's officiating itself has been, as we know throughout history, very inconsistent. And that's the thing where they just got to really work on it overall. And as far as the track limit stuff is concerned, I think it is a problem only in the fact that how much you're paying the price for it really might be a little bit too much. Like a whole pass through rather than like say, COTA is basically like an F1 style track. That's what it's known for most, F1. And what they do there is they usually give a couple second penalties, like 5 seconds or so. I think they could bring something like that into NASCAR and have that make sense as well there instead of just the whole pass through.
See, this is where I'm at, though. I don't want any of that nonsense. I really don't. Like, if we have to have track limits because of the type of track we're at, don't go to that track. We don't really deal with this at Watkins Glen. I mean, they have it at Portland at times, or if you make that short shoot, you have to stop and go. I don't want officials to be involved in racing. I hate it. That's why I don't like F1 for the most part. Like, if this is where it's going to go, NASCAR's going to do what NASCAR wants to do. I'm tuning out. I'll do the research and all that, but I'll be honest, as a fan, I'm tuning out. And I heard from multiple fans this weekend. We don't want it. You're right. Part of it's because NASCAR's reputation, but we don't want to deal with it. If we have to have rules like that where they have to make judgment calls, then I feel like we shouldn't be there. And I understand I'm on a kind of a far extreme and it's going to upset some people and people won't necessarily agree. And that's cool. If that's the way it needs to be, and we're talking about bringing second penalties or drive-throughs or pit stops or anything like this, because it's a technical track and you can't get 4 wheels under this curb and I don't want to be there. I want to enjoy my sports and not make it complicated. To me, this is no different than the hip drop tackle in the NFL. I hate that. We're making things way too lenient or not lenient, leaning too much on officiating for the integrity in the sport to take place. And I hate it. The more we bring into it, the more I think it's a problem. It takes away from the product on the field, on the track. So I get it. I get why. I just don't want any part of it, man. maybe I'm old fuddy-duddy, curmudgeon, what have you, but I don't want to have to be worrying about where a penalty and figuring out where they're at. Race. Go and race.
Or
I mean,
look at
what's that?
I have this to add too, just to piggyback off the point here too. If you want to take the officiating out, then just section off the sections with curbing or so to deter drivers from using the curbs if you want to get rid of the officiating aspect.
I mean, I think back of Earnhardt passing in the grass at Watkins Glen, okay? I think it was Watkins Glen. I don't think it was Sonoma. Pretty sure it was Watkins Glen. Maybe it was Riverside. Would that even be allowed today? Would that have been a penalty?
The pass at the grass was what was that at the All-Star race at
no,
Charlotte,
that's the one they actually called a pass in the grass, but he actually did do a pass in the grass at a road course.
I'm trying to remember what road course that was. I'm gonna say that it probably would not have counted back then as they do now. It depends on how much of the courses that get cut off is what I think they're making the judgment call on.
It was at Riverside.
Ah, Riverside. Yeah, that is definitely way back in the day. And most of the NASCAR field has not even really raced there or even heard of it at this point.
No, but my point is the overall aspect of that was really exciting and cool to see. Is that something we'll never see again because of the way we have these rules and whatnot? We don't have these the only limits I know of at Watkins Glen is if you don't go through the bus stop. And the penalty there is you stop and you go, which to me makes sense. If you cut the corner, the great penalty is no, you have to stop at that corner, then go, right? That's it. And that's for everybody to see. It's not like we need NASCAR to come in and say something. All the fans can see, yep, they blew the turn. They better stop. If they don't stop, now it's a penalty. Now you do get NASCAR involved because now you got to go do your drive-through because you didn't do what you're supposed to do. I just don't like it when it's this complicated. I think it takes away from the racing. And look, even NASCAR admitted having 36 track limit penalties over the weekend is not what they wanted. They don't want to be in that involved. And to your point, Sean, then let's do something else with the track, whether it be different curbing, different turns. And you're spot on. They specifically built this track for F1. It was never meant to be a stock car venue. But the fact of the matter is COTA, after it lost that F1 race for that 2-3 year window, they had to do something. And now, yeah, F1 is back, but racing and tracks are a whole different. We could probably have a whole show on the nightmares of that, right, Sean? But
sure.
It's I'm done. You can review whatever you want on COTA. I've said my piece. It's just I'm out on it, I guess, is where I'm at. And when we come back here next year, I'm going to have very low expectations.
Well, who knows? I'm sure they're probably going to be looking back on this weekend and considering at least some minor changes for next year as far as the officiating, hopefully, is concerned. So we'll go from there and talk about some more of the results. Corey Heim, he won in the trucks, continues a strong season. Connor Zilich came in for his first ever NASCAR start, 17 years old. He went through all those setbacks, but still came back with a top 5 finish in that Spire truck. So give us your thoughts there on the truck race real quick, Rich.
We called Corey. Corey won, right? So good deal there. This is a prime example when I'm kind of leaning some early in the week. It doesn't hurt to put a little bet on before we go to qualifying practice. Heim dropped from like plus 500 to plus 130, 150. So it still paid as a bet, but man, it really is a bummer when those odds take place. I was absolutely impressed with Mr. Zilch. Honestly, I'm more impressed with what he came out this week and said. His goal is to be the youngest NASCAR champion. That record is currently at 23 years old. So hat tip. I love when these guys share their goals and aspirations. The truck race was largely what we thought. What's going to be interesting to me is what we hear back on Marco Andretti's truck. I know the guys in the chat, believe me, we've never seen that before where the actual snaps like that and the entire rear end housing comes off. I don't know if they were running a light axle and Will Hop contributed to it. I know Will Hop contributed to what was going on. I don't know where the weak link was and why, but NASCAR is going to figure it out. It was confiscated, went to R&D, so there'll be more we hear on that probably the next time we go road racing. Other than that, it was what it was. Track limits came into play, but Connor Connor Zilch definitely. Look, we need to keep that name in mind and watch where this young man goes. There's a lot of really young talent in NASCAR right now, Sean. I mean, look at how well Gibbs is running in Cup, and he's one of the youngest. They're struggling a little bit with the youth at Stewart Haas, but there's a lot of young talent between Truck, Xfinity, and Cup right now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And you want to mention about Connor Zilch. He has a development deal with Trackhouse Racing, so
Yes.
it would not be a shock to see him in Cup within the next few years, especially based on their program alone. They're also developing SVG and working with Zane Smith as well. So, yeah, he definitely has a bright future, especially if he continues to run like this. But let's move on to the Xfinity race here. Kyle Larson won the Xfinity race, and it was a last lap pass while Austin Hill and Shane Van Gisbergen, well, Austin Hill was not amused by SVG's move to bump him, but Austin did end up bumping him in turn one on that final restart to even get the lead. So, yeah, while SVG was like, "Oh, that's just racing," Austin Hill showed some displeasure within his interviews. Thoughts on this, Rich?
I liked what Hill's spotter said to Hill. I'd done the same thing if I was going for a win. He basically told him to hush it and deal with it. Again, guess what, though? While SVG finished second, guess where he technically finished in the race due to, you guessed it, track limits.
27th.
Yep.
27th.
So, again, takes away from the race, right? We held all that excitement. That's where I'm at with that. Larson did his thing. Anytime Larson's in that truck, I think we got to take note.
Oh, yeah. And ultimately, what would have been interesting is if SVG ended up winning and then the track limits thing came into play. It'd be an even bigger sticking point than what it is now.
It would be.
So let's talk about the Cup race real quick here, too. So William Byron, he ended up dominating the race. He had the best car there for a good amount of it, led the most laps. But, he had to still ride well enough in order to hold off Christopher Bell, who was holding an impressive charge all the way from about 16 laps to go or so. He was about 15 seconds back. He cut that down to about half a second by the end of the race there. So very impressive run there for Christopher Bell, finishing second. What do you think about Byron versus Bell here? And also Christopher Bell's confrontation with Kyle Busch after the race. Give us your thoughts on that.
I think we very legitimately could be talking about Byron versus Bell in the final championship race. Bell has been arguably the fastest car driver combo for the last month. And Byron has definitely been one of the best performers for the last month, as you noted, the only two-time winner. As far as Bell and Busch, Bell can say what he wants. He got into him. He overdrove the corner and got into Busch. And look, Busch is going to get upset anyway. And he really didn't say much other than, you got one. He went up to him and said, "Have I ever dumped or turned you?" Bell goes, "No, not that I crawled." "Okay, now I owe you one." So Bell's going to get one at some point from Kyle. And in my opinion, rightfully so. But he got into him. He overdrove the corner. It is what it is. It's racing. But that was on Bell, in my opinion, his mistake. But, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, though, especially considering it's Richmond we're going to. And, short tracks are usually ripe for payback. So something to maybe consider this weekend.
I think Kyle's going to wait for an opportune time that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's say it's the end of the race and Kyle's second. Goodbye, Mr. Bell. I mean, I'm just telling you right now, if we're down to 5 to go and Busch is running him down and can't quite get a nice clean run, Mr. Bell, I think you're going to find yourself backed into the wall. Just saying. And honestly, look, anyone that has a beef with Kyle Busch, fine. I don't get it personally. I really don't. I really like him as a driver. I think he gets a bad rep. But I'll tell you the way I drove and the way I still am that way. I'll drive you the way you drive me. You overdrive me and dump me and turn me. Mistake or not mistake, I got one coming back to you. It is what it is.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, let's go into and review some of the news stories and driver announcements that have been happening this week. Let's start with the one at the Cup Series level with Ty Dillon officially confirming that he'll be driving the number 16 Kaulig Racing Chevrolet part-time. And he's going to begin with this week's race at Richmond. He has 5 races currently set. We have them rolling across the screen: Richmond, Texas, New Hampshire, Richmond again, and Kansas. Give us your quick thoughts here, Rich.
I'm kind of shocked. He hasn't really looked impressive in the Truck Series so far. I know he's just gotten an opportunity with Xfinity. Honestly, I think Ty's trying to restart his career, right? He didn't have really a full ride anywhere outside of trucks with a team that was kind of put behind the 8 ball with the Matt DiBenedetto situation. I'm really curious to see what we see out of him in the number 16. They haven't been like super impressive, but they've been moderately decent, right? So,
yeah,
he's going to have to, I mean, you know, like we talked the other day and I said, it's not really moving the needle yet, his Xfinity deal. This will give me some real opinion on him, I think, is where I'm at. Like, this is let's see what we get with him in the 16.
Yeah, that 16 is going to have a variety of drivers this year. Dillon just added his name to the list. He's like the 4th or 5th different driver getting in that car this year. So very interesting to think about. All right, let's move on because the next couple of stories, well, we have a bunch of Truck Series driver announcements here, starting with Sammy Smith, Xfinity Series regular for Junior Motorsports. He's going to be driving in the Truck Series for 4 races for Spire Motorsports. He's going to be driving at Martinsville, North Wilkesboro, IRP, and Milwaukee. Give us your quick synopsis here, Rich. What do we think about Sammy in these 7?
I think this is an opportunity to boost his confidence. They have really struggled since he's moved up or moved over to Junior Motorsports. All of Junior Motorsports has been kind of rough for Xfinity, and Sean, you can go a lot more detail on that with some numbers, but I think this is a great opportunity with him. I think he does need to boost his confidence a little bit. I think they're expecting to see Sammy Smith maybe get a win or 2 out of this group of races here. Look, that number 7 truck hasn't been the best truck every week, but has been one of the best trucks each week. So I think this is good for both organization driver. I'm curious to see because I'm really disappointed so far in Sammy Smith's 2023 or 2024 Xfinity season.
Yeah, regarding the 2024 numbers for Sammy Smith, he just has 3 top 10 finishes through the 5 Xfinity Series races so far. His best finish was 8th at Las Vegas. So, although he hasn't exactly been that great, he hasn't exactly been terrible with JRM to start the year.
No.
All right, let's go forth and go through the next Truck Series driver announcement. We have Chris Wright. He's joining Tricon Garage for 2 Truck Series races, Texas in April and Pocono in July. Give us your quick thoughts here with Chris Wright, Rich.
That number 1 team, I don't have a ton of opinion about Chris Wright yet. I will be doing more a deeper dive. Russ always laughs at me when I say that. What I'm referencing is I go start digging into other race series. I start looking at ARCA. I start looking at sports cars. I start looking at anything and everything where I can find out where these folks raced and the kind of success. Because some guys we'll talk about in a little bit. Bubba Pollard, for example, has quite the local short track success or regional short track success. You're not going to see a whole ton on him, but he's going to matter this weekend. We'll talk about that. So I have to dig deeper on Chris Wright. The problem is, or I shouldn't say the problem, the fact of the matter is Tricon, the number 1 truck, they're rotating through all sorts of names. Development drivers, they're kind of just seeing what they got. It's an excellent team, so you have to kind of know it every time they put someone in that truck. But we haven't really seen the number 1 truck do much for the last probably a year or so, year and a half. So, I'm looking into it. Nothing that I'm getting super excited about quite yet.
All right. Well, you mentioned about other series. You mentioned about stuff that could get you excited. How about this next Truck Series announcement? Supercars driver Cam Waters will be making his Truck Series debut with Thor Sport Racing next weekend at Martinsville Speedway. What do you think about this? And their Supercars driver, Rich.
One thing I have noticed, these road racers, AJ Allmendinger, after the whole darts with feathers thing, but Juan Pablo took to it real quickly. These guys that are used to road racing, for some reason, take to Martinsville very well. And I'm guessing it's because it's flat for the most part. So it's very similar corner than what these road racers see. NASCAR as a general is a lot of banking. You don't see that in open wheel racing or road racing, right? The supercars or IMSA vehicles. But they do have long straightaways, tight turns, right? So that heavy throttle, heavy gas, making it kind of roll through the corner. I think there's a certain skill involved with that. I'm kind of curious to see Cam. I don't even know much about Cam Waters, but the fact that I know he comes from a road racing background and is going to Martinsville, I'm a bit intrigued, especially with Thor Sport. Thor Sport hasn't been amazing. They've been one of the best teams over the history of the Craftsman Truck Series in general. Last year and a half, they've been so-so. Ben Rhodes has been, I mean, to use what the words you used earlier, they haven't been terrible, but they haven't been great. They've been pretty good, right? Top 10, top 12, that sort of stuff. So I'm curious to see Cam Waters. I'm kind of curious, are we seeing maybe somebody that's looking to take over that 88 truck that Matt Crafton drives? I mean, we can't deny he's getting up there in age. Just saying. I don't know when his contract is up, but
makes you think, though. But Cam Waters was talking about how he actually went towards Martinsville and experienced the race weekend last year. He said he was pretty excited to try it. And, he's going to be driving in that number 66 truck in particular, which has had different drivers, like Connor Jones. So what do you think about that after hearing that?
Like I said, I'm curious. I'm interested. I'm curious. Connor Jones was one I had flagged last week when we talked about just as someone as kind of a decent buy, qualified a little better than you would have hoped. Again, I trust Thor Sport. They'll be fast enough. Let's see what this road racer's got, man.
Sounds exciting. Sounds very exciting. And speaking of seeing things that we've got ourselves some paint schemes to talk about this week, Rich. So let's get right on into it. Paint scheme spotlight of the week. Give us your first one here, Rich.
Man, I really love the look of that Kyle Busch car. I absolutely love the look of that Kyle Busch car. I love the Rebel sponsorship. That car in general is just bad looking to me, man. I love it. I love it. I'm glad they shared an actual car image of it too.
Yeah, this scheme was announced way back during the beginning of the season when they were announcing some of the different sponsors that Kyle Busch was going to have in Rebel Bourbon. This is a new one. There's a new paint scheme here. I especially love how they did the side of the car where they got that little wood texturing going there with the red line under. The Rebel branding is just front and center and in your face. I actually really think this is such a cool car. And I'm sure the dogs barking in the background agree with that proposition.
Apparently, there must be another rabbit outside. Enzo killed a rabbit the other morning. So apparently he's got Easter Bunny on his mind.
Man, so
sorry.
A little bit of bourbon and a little bit of rabbits, a little bit of Easter. That's quite a combination there, Rich.
Hey, we used to take off for Mom and God. We don't anymore. So we might as well recognize the weekend, I guess. But this is a really sharp looking paint scheme. So, and look, Kyle runs well here. So, there's a reason to kind of look for this paint scheme. You know what this paint scheme kind of reminds me a little bit of, by the way?
Which one?
A black number 3.
Oh, okay. I think I see what you're cooking with that one. Pretty interesting analysis considering some of the discussions people have had with Kyle Busch and RCR before, but I can dig the comparison. Let me get into the next paint scheme here, and I'm going to go into my first choice here, which is Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s NOS Energy scheme. I love the mixture of blue and orange. The black stripes are in such great positioning. This is a car that really pops. NOS Energy, it's like nitrous, moves fast. I love the usage of the sponsor here. This is a great looking car, Rich. Really great looking one.
I liked it when I saw, because you picked yours before I did. And I was like, it's got orange. I don't have to pick it for once. I think it is a very sharp looking paint scheme. They did an excellent job with it. And I like, this is one of those dual type of sponsorships. You got Kroger on the nose and NOS on the back. And look, that blue works for Kroger. the blue works for Nos. They did an excellent job getting these two paired up for this paint scheme.
Yeah, it looks really incredible. And especially under the lights, this thing, you're really going to be able to see it there, Rich.
It'll be good.
All right, let's go on into your next paint scheme choice there, Rich. What do you got for us?
Christopher Bell. It's not overly exciting, and I know it's a lot like last weekend's, but when I was flipping through the images, I just liked well, that's not Christopher Bell.
Oh, that's the 20 car here. That's the 45 car, Tyler Reddick, because I thought
it was Tyler Reddick of the 45. The Christopher Bell car is a black and white mobile car. Very, very kind of basic. It's not identical to what we saw last week, but anyway, that's the one I'll be looking forward to. And maybe it's because maybe I'm subconsciously thinking Christopher Bell's going to have the fastest car anyway. So that could be it.
Boom. That's right. There you go. Oh, yeah. This Mobile 1 paint scheme. Christopher Bell, he actually ran this paint scheme at the Clash before. So okay. I know that I've gushed over the Mobile 1 paint schemes. We did a whole little segment on that last week at COTA when there was so many of them. But you know what? I will always give a nod towards this being one of the best looking paint schemes of the year so far, with the Pegasus, the white, the black, the red. It just looks so sleek and fast, Rich. Love it.
I love the way they blended the colors. You got the black to the white with that red just kind of mixed in with the black. The Pegasus there, really taking up that space. The Mobile 1 works so well over the wheel. And look, he's been fast in this car all year, man. So we know it's going to be fast.
Oh, yeah. That thing had speed at the Clash, too, before it had some unfortunate circumstances and just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Things did not go Chris Seabell's way there to even make that race and show the scheme off, but I'm sure he's going to properly show it off this weekend there. So good call on that one, Rich. Good call.
Thank you.
So as for my final paint scheme, we're going here with a new Trackhouse scheme. That's Daniel Suarez's new Quaker State paint scheme. Now, we've seen the different Quaker State paint schemes in the past, but this one, with the green, the gold, it all looks really, really cool.
Have we ever seen one that is this green from Quaker State? It's always been some sort of white and green mix, right?
Yeah. It might just be the render potentially showing even more green than there actually is, but I don't care. It still looks great.
I mean, I see 2 or 3 different shades of green, and that's what I'm saying. Just like we don't eat peanuts or peanut M&Ms in the garage or the pits, painting a green car was very, very taboo until the whole Interstate Battery won the championship. I mean, people would put a green car out there, but Earnhardt was notorious for saying, green is what the grass is, right? You don't paint a green car. So I'm excited to see this. I really want to see what that 99 looks like, because from the picture here, almost looks like it's going to have that gold metallic finish to it, like we've seen from Brad Keselowski, which I think would just make this. What's that?
The chrome numbers.
Yes. So I'm excited to see what this looks like on the track, man.
As do I, and especially because Trackhouse, they've been killing it with the paint schemes even since last year. So not a shock to have them have another good fire-looking paint scheme like this.
Right.
All righty, let's go on into it and actually start talking about the race weekend itself. Let's preview Richmond there. Rich, it has Rich and Richmond. Look at that.
Richmond Raceway, the action track. Well, I don't know what to expect, Sean. I have 2 major concerns I brought up to Ray. One, I absolutely despise that we are practicing Cup cars at 10:30 a.m., qualifying at 11, and we don't race until 7 p.m. the next day. I am very concerned that practice times are going to be a little misleading. Not that we should just get rid of them, but that if I see someone, say, in the top 10 in consecutive lap times, that's kind of almost like a tier like I would use for football, right? Like somewhere between 5 and 7 is probably what I'm going to be looking at. Normally, I'm kind of focusing in on the top 3 to 5 and looking for gems after that didn't put a lot of laps down or something. This week, I may be looking more in kind of that just past that 4 or 5 range. This is more from what I've learned being at the Coke 600 and all of that. It's very interesting to me. It always seemed like the cars that were kind of meh, staying on the lead lap, decent speed, right? There's only at that point only 12 cars on the lead lap. So there's plenty of speeds per se, but they're not one of the front runners. And then the sun goes down and the lights come up. And all of a sudden you see Jeff Gordon there in 11th place just starts moving forward. And now we're completely dark. Stars are out. And Jeff Gordon's the fastest truck or fastest car on the track, right? This is what I kind of fear we're going to see this weekend. At the same time, we have not seen good action, Sean, at this racetrack in the last 2 years. I mean, it has been almost brutal because of the wide racing surface. We haven't had the cautions, right?
Yep.
And we've had massively long green flag runs on a 3/4 mile track, which means 100, 110 laps in, we're lapping half the field. So I'm nervous. I was hopeful that NASCAR would come out and said, we brought a new tire this weekend, but I haven't heard that. So I think we're going to see a lot like we saw last year, where in the summer race, we had basically 4 guys lead 80 to 100 laps, and that was the show.
Yeah, I honestly think we could see something like that again, potentially, especially when you know how short tracks are. You get a driver that goes out front. If their car is good, they're staying there. Nobody's going to be passing them for a while. Although, yeah, looking back even towards the last race in April, we've only got, let's see here, Kyle Larson led 93 laps, Truex led 56, Hamlin led 71, Byron led 117, and pretty much no other driver even crossed above 20 laps led.
Right. It's been 3 to 4 drivers dominating the laps led portion, which like I was telling Ray, because Ray was kind of blown away by this, right? He's like, wait a second. It's the same 0.25 points to lead a lap, regardless how many laps there are. I said, yes, Ray. I said, no one has ever brought that up or asked, but I was like, that is absolutely a brilliant point, because I said, to your point, Ray, because he said, didn't you say somewhere we only did like 80? I said, well, last week we did 67. So I said, you look at the potential points available from leading laps and fastest laps, which kind of go hand in hand, right? It's not uncommon for the leader to rattle off the fastest laps or the car that's the fastest to lead a bunch of laps, right? So they kind of go hand in hand. You've got 400 laps this weekend versus 67 last weekend. Scoring's going to be completely out of whack. We're going to have 400-point scores, right? I mean, it won't be necessarily uncommon to have 2 drivers be over 100, 120 points this week. That's possible with the way the laps worked out, or the number of laps we have. So hitting on the top scores and stuff like that's going to be a big deal, but it is very interesting from a DFS standpoint, because I'd never thought about it the way Ray was kind of teeing it up. And I'm like, you're right, Ray. Every week it's a whole, we can't do like we do in football or baseball or basketball, where it's like, we know if we hit 170 points or 159 points or whatever it is, we're going to be cashing 60%, 70% of the time. In NASCAR, it is so volatile. We don't even have a standard from week to week.
Yeah, for sure. And especially because we know as a short track, the lap count being that high, we've got to hit on those dominators, especially if there's only going to be less than 5 drivers out there leading laps, which, we saw that at Phoenix. Phoenix was a place where we only saw mainly just a couple of Toyota drivers just dominate the race. And Bristol was kind of the same thing, where you only saw just a few drivers as well. We're using the same rules package as Phoenix, but we also have another short track event in Bristol in the books that we can look back on. So ultimately, for DFS, we're going to have to lean on finding those dominators and just figuring out who can just finish pretty solidly from there and just rounded out our lineups that way.
I will say, I think we can get away with chasing some of we got to have the 3-4 dominators, but chasing a couple of place differentials. I have no problem doing it here at Richmond versus next weekend when we go to Martinsville. I'm very nervous to do that at Martinsville, because you could be a solid car at Martinsville, have bad qualifying run, hit the curb, whatever it was. And now you find you having to fight a lap down the whole, and you could still have a decent finish, but you lose all the lead lap opportunity. it ends up being a big sweat. But that's not as much of an issue here at Richmond. If you have a fast car and you're near the back, you have enough time, unlike a Martinsville or a Bristol, to get up into, I wouldn't say safe zone, but up where you're not constantly battling to stay on the lead lap. If you have a bad car here, though, you will go multiple laps down very fast.
Oh, for sure. It is one of the shortest tracks in the entire Cup schedule that easily sets drivers up for that.
Yeah. So, notable starters this week for Xfinity, we've got Dawson Cram, Morgan. So Morgan is not going to be there. For anybody that believes into praying and that sort of thing, his wife had to go in for emergency induction of their baby. So he turned around while he was on his way to Xfinity to go back to be with his wife in Michigan. So thoughts and prayers for Morgan. I don't know what change will be yet. We haven't heard. I think everybody's more just worried about making sure the baby and the mom are healthy. Patrick Emmerling, we've seen him around. Not anything I'd get overly excited about. Logan Bearden. Taylor Gray, that is one we should take note of in the number 19 JGR car. Eric Amarola, the number 20 JGR car, another notable name. Corey Heim, racing for Sam Hunt Racing in the 26. We'll probably have to talk about him. Ryan Vargas in the 32. Vargas has been a great cheapie for DFS at times, so we'll have to kind of keep our eye on that. Joey Gase, Matt DiBenedetto in the number 38. I'm not overly excited there, but he could show some speed. The name I am interested in seeing that most of us have probably never heard of, Bubba Pollard in the 88. That would be the JRM car. That'll be the same car and team that Junior will drive for when he hops in the Xfinity ride at Bristol. And then Josh Bilicki in the 92. As far as Pollard goes, he is notorious around short track circles. You'll see interviews with him all the time where he's like, we suck, we're terrible, I don't know how we're going to race, and he will be the fastest car on the track. So if we get an interview with him this weekend and he talks about how terrible his car is, I don't think he will, because this is a new opportunity for him. But if he does, plug him in your DFS lineups. You know, maybe throw a cheap bet on a top 10 finish, something like that. He can get around this speedway, folks. He's from the area. He's race modifieds here, I believe. I'll have to go back and double check that. I'm almost positive he's race modifieds there. I'll have to double check. Or maybe it was, I'll have to look. You know what? Strike that from the record. Let me look up. I know he's raced at Richmond. I just don't know what kind of vehicle. So I'm curious to see what he's got.
Modifieds.
Modifieds. Thank you.
I believe it was.
Thank you. I thought so, but anyway, in the article, I'll have some more info on that, because trust me, not often these short track guys get these opportunities. And Sean, do you remember Dick Trickle?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so Dick Trickle had a knack at short tracks as well. He did not get many opportunities in top equipment, but you would be shocked every time Dick Trickle showed up at Bristol. Every time Dick Trickle showed up at these short tracks, he showed speed. And I'm telling you, I think that's what we're going to see from Bubba Pollard, man. I'm telling you, it's like deja vu all over again, man.
I believe it to be certainly plausible. I'm not doubting the equipment at all with that 88 car just being fast. I don't think it's going to be as fast as, say, like the main JRM cars, but I certainly think it's going to be in the conversation for sure. And with Bubba Pollard, I heard him talk during this week saying that he's not worried about the car necessarily or just getting around the track. But the thing that most concerns him is the pit stop process, because he says that's going to be new to him.
I didn't even think about that. And you know what? Hat tip for him for recognizing that and being open about it, because where he comes from, they stop the race and pit.
Yeah,
or don't
exactly.
Pit. You know what I mean? Like, those are the options. Oh, awesome. The only other driver we got to mention for this week, and you've already talked about him, Sean, Ty Dillon in the 16. I don't know about you. I'm more intrigued and interested in watching than I am excited. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with you there. My only point about Ty Dillon is just being in that 16 car. He ends up qualifying deep in the field potentially, but doesn't have outright terrible practice speeds. I am going to consider him from there as a potential mainly cash-based play.
That's fair. I can understand that. A lot. All right. So if you want any more of our content, again, $39.99, $40, get you 12 months. Sean, that's less than $4 a month if I did math right. Less than $4 a month gets you NASCAR, horse racing, PGA, other racing, MMA, NHL, NBA, gets you everything except for March Madness. We've only got a week and a half left of it. Major League Baseball, which look, Ray Flowers, Rob Povia, and Patio Joe, they've got you covered, and it's well worth its weight in gold over there. And the NFL package, we do. It's to my knowledge, I believe the USFL is under this, but I could be wrong. But look, for $40, you're getting so much stuff. I honestly, it's worth the $40 for the information, in my opinion, even if you don't do much DFS or racing. There is so much info. It makes enjoying the games even more fun to watch. So go to fantasyguru.com, go to the Game Time MVP package, go to join now, go to all packages, and it'll be promoted right there at the top, $39.99, 12 months. Brought to you by fantasyguru.com and the Elite Plus Network. So while we're talking fantasy, let's talk about some drivers to watch this weekend. Sean, why don't you take us through your top price drivers?
Alrighty, top price drivers to watch. The drivers that I am going to be putting up there as the ones to watch. I have 3 listed here: Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, and Kyle Busch. But really, I only just put 2 of the Toyota drivers there because I just wanted an excuse to talk about somebody other than Gibbs. Because the JGR cars, in my opinion, are going to be the class of the field and the ones to watch, especially with how they've been doing on short tracks this season. Hamlin, this is one of his best tracks statistically. There is no debate, especially with how many laps he's led, how many times he's led at Richmond within recent events is kind of crazy. He's finished in the top 5 in so many of the recent races. He's won there multiple times. There's no debate about Hamlin being good, especially when the cars have just been really great there. Christopher Bell, remember Phoenix? He was very, very good there. Led a lot of laps, ended up winning. JGR's been very good at these shorter tracks. Got to put him up there. And as for Kyle Busch, I think he's one to watch simply just because if he has a car that he ends up liking at this track, watch out, because history does point towards the fact that Kyle Busch is very, very good.
So you stole my thunder, Sean. I wrote up Busch quite a bit in the overview article. You know I've been on the Busch bandwagon here. The names I picked was to at least get 2 other names than what you had. Look, it's funny to me you talked about you love all the JGR drivers, and who are the 3 I named? Martin Truex, Ty Gibbs, and Denny Hamlin, right? They're all 3 JGR cars. Kyle Busch would have been in that conversation. I don't know that I'm in or out necessarily on the Larson or Byron, for example. They should be. Look, I will be completely transparent with everyone. Everybody in this top price tier, I could make an argument of why you should consider them. Where they qualify is going to matter for us, especially if Truex shows similar speed as Hamlin and he's qualified back in 20th and Hamlin's in 15th or something, or 12th. I might chase the extra place differential points. If Hamlin qualifies on the pole or Bell does, I might chase the dominator points. But I'm with Sean. The JGR cars we got to watch. We saw that at Phoenix. This racetrack it's not identical by any means, but it's in the same ballpark. I do like Kyle Busch a lot, Sean. I mean, you don't have to twist my arm to get me to use him.
Yeah, exactly. And as far as some of the other drivers are concerned, Larson does have good history at Richmond. He is one that you can never fully count out at these sorts of tracks. I'm just not on him as much just because he didn't show the speed as much at Phoenix. But William Byron, on the other hand, I think if you want to pivot away from the Toyotas as an alternative, I think he's one of the go-to options here, just because even though he doesn't have the finishes to prove it, Byron's been pretty good at Richmond in the April races. He's led over 100 laps in the last 2, and that 2014 shows speed no matter what the track type is. So Byron's on my watch list too. I just think the Toyotas are just really, especially JGR, they're going to be the cars to beat this week overall.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. So why don't you take us through your mid-tier option, because I don't want to tell anyone I was lazy. I wasn't. It just I got tired of retyping the same names. So why don't you lead us off here, Sean?
All right. Let's get into some mid-tier options here. For me, the 3, technically it's 4 I'm going to mention here because one of them is kind of like a tied pick. But I'm going with Brad Keselowski, Alex Bowman, And the tied pick is between Josh Berry and Chase Briscoe. So I might as well explain the Berry Briscoe thing first, because I like them about as equally to each other this week. Josh Berry, he ended up finishing second in his only start at Richmond when he was filling in for another driver at Hendrick. He has a short track background. That 4-car did win in 2022 with Kevin Harvick, so the equipment is certainly there. Stewart Haas on the short tracks, that's where I trust them the most in order to perform well. And Briscoe, he's been a solid top 15 performer, sometimes sneaking into the top 10, often on these shorter tracks. So gotta like them there, especially when the price of both of them is like around that 7,500 range on DraftKings. That is a nice price for them. As for Brad Keselowski and Alex Bowman, Keselowski, RFK, you got to love the RFK drivers on Richmond, especially with Buescher being a recent winner, but Brad also leading quite a few laps, finishing top 15 in the last 4 races there. I think Brad gets the nod for me just because of price as it is compared to Buescher, but I like them both this week. And Alex Bowman, he's one of those drivers there. He's won at Richmond before. He's a sneaky driver, ends up being a solid performer. Gotta like him as well, especially in Hendrick equipment.
I completely agree with all your sentiments on all of them. I mean, I routed up in the article. Brad, there's so much to like about Brad, considering they haven't been good the last few years overall as a team. He struggled, before the new car going to Roush Fenway. And yet he's top. He's like top 3 or 4 in just about every single category at this track, which tells me as bad as he's been in recent history overall, right? The last 4 years-ish or so, my gosh, it never skewed his numbers. They're that ridiculous. Berry was really good in Xfinity at this track. Like, he kind of had this track figured out in Xfinity. Harvick was the only one that had 4 top 10s at this track in 4 races. So now you got Berry stepping in. I'm with you there. And I'm with you on Briscoe, man. I mean, he's had some great finishes here. I'm very torn on a lot of drivers. I'm 100% in agreement with Sean's list, but I do think we need to keep our eye on Tyler Reddick, Ross Chastain, and Joey Logano. They're all priced in that same kind of area. Logano's price has just been dropping because he's been finishing so poorly. At some point, he's going to end up being the chalkiest play. I'm very twisted up on what we do this week, Sean, and I'm nervous with practice, like we said already, being in the morning. There's a lot of moving parts this weekend that I feel like it's going to be a little bit more wide open. We had a ton of overlap in all our drivers and all the tiers. So go ahead and hit us with your bargains.
So I do want to also make one more quick point before I get into the bargains, that Richmond is also a track that also sometimes tire wear can also come into play too. And that also is another big thing that could affect this race. And remember, Bristol was a big tire wear race. And you have to remember Brad Keselowski, he scored a top 3 when that happened as well there too. Something also important to note. But as for the sleepers and bargains, I got Ryan Preece, John Hunter Nemechek, and Carson Hocevar. Preece, he comes from a short track racing background. He tends to do pretty good with these sorts of shorter tracks. SHR, like I said, where I trust them the most is at these shorter tracks in order to have some speed and have the technique in order to score some solid finishes. And Preece is just one of the cheaper drivers overall out there that you could easily stick in a lineup. As for John Hunter Nemechek, he's been incredible at this track when it comes to Xfinity. He also was a former winner at this track in the Truck Series. Legacy Motor Club, the Toyotas, got that Toyota support. Love them there. And as for Carson Hocevar, he ended up winning at Richmond in the Truck Series in his last appearance. And I think due to the price range, he's one of those drivers that I think could be a very sneaky play if the circumstances line up.
Look, I'm in 100% agreement with all this. The only driver I wanted to add to it was Todd Gilliland. He was 15th in the summer race here. Gilliland has impressed me this year overall. I mean, we know, the silly stat earlier this year about how many laps he's led. They've been fast enough to be a top 15-ish car just about everywhere. We know the whole front row alignment and all that. Preece, I think you probably have to give a nod to if there's a tiebreaker between him and Gilliland. But look, all 3 of these drivers add Gilliland. They're all for viable values, in my opinion, to use this week. qualifying may change our opinion on who to lean on. You know, I'm not sure I would lean on Gilliland over Priest. If Gilliland qualifies 15th and Priest qualifies 25th or vice versa, I'm probably going to lean on the guy that gets, you know, the place differential type of thing.
Yeah, and talking about Gilliland there, he actually has 3 races with positive place differential finishes within the last 4 Cup Series races. Something to note, especially if he ends up qualifying deep in the field, and he has within the last 4 races, his highest starting position within the last 4 races was Bristol, where he was 24th.
24th?
Yeah, 24th.
That's not bad. I mean, nah. You know what I mean? Like, when you get in that range, you're starting to, it's good but not great kind of thing. You know what I mean? So, I don't know.
He's just on my list of drivers. Like, say if you need somebody to just be an alternative pivot, I would consider maybe Gilly in that spot. He also has scored a top 15 finish at Richmond before. His other finishes haven't exactly been too great, but considering how the history of these drivers has just been not good for a lot of these guys, they're like 6,000 or below 6,000 especially. The only other one that I may want to just give a slight mention to is Daniel Hemrick, because he's been very good in an Xfinity car, and he's also the cheapest driver on DraftKings this week.
So I'm so glad you went there, because, you know, like I said, the 24 is meh. When you're getting below that 6,000, the Zane Smith comes in at 5,400 or 5,500 or whatever. And I was thinking the exact same thing. If he qualifies low enough, give me some Daniel Hemrick at the 5,100 or 5,200, whatever that lowest price was, because I do think he's capable of going to a 24th place finish. And if he's going to start in 30th, for example, and move up to 24th, man, that's an 18, 20-point day for you, for a guy that's literally paying back 4 times his cost, right? So I think that's a great call out, Sean. I'm 100% with you, man.
Totally. Especially even though the Kaulig racing equipment hasn't been showing as much speed within the past few years, this year, I'm saying, compared to some of those more recent years, Hemrick, I definitely would take a shot on. Both him and Hocevar, I would say, are my 2 favorite picks, below 6,000 and below this week so far.
All right. So we're up against the clock here. Let's rattle off our picks. I think we've covered kind of the drivers pretty well. So let's rattle off our picks pretty quick here, and then we'll nail our core 4. So lead the way, Mr. Sean.
So getting off to the betting core 4, actually, we're going into our winners, to betting winners, essentially. So I got Denny Hamlin at plus 500, Christopher Bell at plus 500, Brad Keselowski at plus 1,200, and Josh Berry, he's at plus 6,000 at DraftKings. Some other books might have him higher, around plus 8,000 or even plus 10. So something to consider there. What's your core 4 for betting there, Rich?
So I agree with Sean's call out there. Since he already had Hamlin and Bell, I pivoted. I'm with him on Brad K, though. I can't get away from him. I've been pushing him in my article. I also like Ty Gibbs at plus 900. Think it's worth a look. Martin Truex at plus 600. Don't be sleeping on him. And because I wanted to throw a long shot out there, and I kind of like Sean's already, I wanted to change it up. Ryan Preece at plus 10,000. You know, one of those throw a buck on it, try to win 100 type of thing.
I like the call with that one there, too. I'd consider throwing a buck on that one. Really, all the Stewart Haas cars, I'm just not as into Noah Gragson out of the SHR cars due to history. This has not been like one of his better tracks, even in Xfinity as it is. But, you know, he can be a decent DFS play if the circumstances line up. But as for the other 3, love them. Love them, love them, love them.
Well, let's lay down our core 4 DFS picks. I apologize. I did not do FanDuel this week. I just spaced on it. So my apologies to everyone. In Discord, I'll be more than happy to throw it up there. But my core 4 this week, again, I can't get away from Brad Keselowski. $8,200. I think he's a value. I do like Todd Gilliland at 5,500. Again, I do think an excellent pivot there is the whole Daniel Hemrick. Michael McDowell at 7,000. He's had some nice runs here. They've shown some speed. He was a disappointment last week, and the car broke. If the car doesn't break, Michael McDowell pays off for us in dividends, quite frankly. If you go with those 3 guys or pivot cheaper from Gilliland, man, the sky's the limit for who you can load on the top end. I've thrown Ty Gibbs in there as number 4. With Ty Gibbs, I can still get Hamlin and Bowman. That seems like a pretty good group. You could go to Truex and Chastain. You could pivot from Gibbs, get Kyle Busch in any other number combination. So that's the reason I kind of went with that group. I think it leaves you some options.
I do like the fact that you get options. You need to have options, especially because you want to try to avoid like that 6,000 and below group as much as possible, I'd say, this week. And if you can get it to, say, your lowest driver is about, say, between that 6,000, 7,000 range, that'd be absolutely great. And even if you do have to dip that far down below, you still have options, as you mentioned, Hemrick, Gilliland, Hosts of Art, as I mentioned earlier. You got options there. But you know what? Let me go into my core 4 here for DFS real quick. And I mentioned a lot of these drivers before. Denny Hamlin, 11,200 on DraftKings, 14,000 on FanDuel, the most expensive driver, but definitely worth the value. Brad Keselowski, 8,200 on DraftKings, 10,500 on FanDuel. I love the price on both sites. I think the potential performance can be great from Brad K. Josh Berry is in my core 4 over Chase Briscoe, just because the price favors Berry a little bit more on both sites. He's 7,500 on DraftKings, 7,000 on FanDuel, and I'm rounding out my cheap pick with John Hunter Nemechek. His impressive Xfinity record, winning in the trucks, very much a driver that I love. He performed well at Bristol. Let's not forget about that either. 6,400 on DraftKings, 5,000 on FanDuel. Let's lock it in there, Rich.
I like it. I like a lot. Look, and I try to find a way to get John Hunter in there. You can do that with what I did. Say go to John Hunter over Gilliland, for example. If you go Gibbs, you're not going to be able to use Hamlin then. Or if you use Hamlin, then you got to go way down to, say, like a Priest or Barry then to pair with it. I'm with you, though, on these guys, though. It's going to be tough to get away from Hamlin. If Hamlin qualifies in the top 5, if Bell qualifies in the top 5, we're going to have to, figure it out. So anyway, that's all I got on that.
All righty. And that'll do it for our show here today. Thank you to all the Fantasy Guru community there listening in with us. Thank you to everybody supporting the show every week. We're going to close it on out, head on out of here. So any last words, Rich?
Nope. Apparently I've got a little bit of a dog emergency to take care of, so I got to get going. Good luck. We'll be talking to you guys soon.
All righty. Thank you for watching, everybody.